Or we could do the gentle knocking on it. If you come this way and sort of, you know, a little arc of loveliness over here. That would be a cluster. I don't want too much clustering. No, it's just like cereal, isn't it? That's great.
Where are you sitting there?
What?
Where are you there?
I'm here. What? I'm here. I'm not there. I'm here. Just what?
I thought you were too short.
Well, that's why I'm standing on a stool. Cheeky fucker. Oh, sorry, you're filming this, aren't you? Anyway, if you make yourself comfortable. So first of all, before leaping into saying things, I want to just introduce Amy Hodkin from Bloomsbury, who is responsible for making these things happen, and possibly even more excitingly, providing the wine. Yay! Do you have anything erudite or otherwise? You don't have to.
Well, thank you, Hugh, for this book. And yeah, it's been an absolute dream to work on. You're a fantastic author to work with. And yes, I just like to thank everyone who has been involved in it, in terms of, you know, interviews and supporting you through the writing process, because reading the acknowledgements, there were so many people who were involved, and I think it's just a testament to how well it's turned out.
That's brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd also like to thank James, who is here, who is the agent who bravely said yes. Which is, so thank you, James. It's really, really delightful. And the next one's going to be even better. And I shall step up because, you know, that's the problem. There we go. Look at his height. And finally, as a thank yous, to Xander and to Caper Books, because isn't this gorgeous? Yeah. Yes. So now we all make a commitment to Xander to all our books, because everybody in here is ready to write their own books. They shall be launched here with wine and all sorts of fun and games. So Xander, thank you so much for hosting this. And the excitement is the first event in here was Kate Rayworth and Natalie Bennett. It's like, wow. So yeah, really, really pretty amazing calibre of people you managed to pull into this place. Who Blackwell's bought out by Waterstones. It's like just yeah. So Blackwell's is no longer an independent bookshop. So we've got Caper to rely on. So no pressure there. So anyway, thank you so much for coming. And I have the apology is that I thought I should probably prepare something quite sort of wise to say. I sent my next book off on Tuesday, and that's not coming out until October probably. And then yesterday I was doing Channel 5 News because there's a big hedgehog story. Do you see the bobble hat? Yeah, it wasn't. They didn't take me all the way to London just for the bobble hat. There was another hedgehog story too. But there was its life has been a little bit sort of chaotic. So what I wanted to do was just do a little introduction to what I've been doing. It's not in the slightest disturbing at all. Yeah, okay, yeah, well, yes. So, talking of which, so when I first suggested to Zoe about writing this book, Cull of the Wild, her response was, "But you write about hedgehogs and beavers and water voles and nice things, and people like that. They're going to hate this." Because it is inevitably contentious, and I have really struggled because what I've had to do is to take a dramatic step outside of my comfort zone, because what I've really begun to notice, maybe this is the thing about getting older, I don't know, I've really begun to realise that whilst I know I'm right on most things, there's a whole bunch of people who think differently. And in fact, one of the things I end the book with is I stole liberally from wise people and then discovered bloody permissions. Sorry, but so the process of writing a book, you meet wise people in print and you go, oh, I'll have a bit of that. And you put it in, you credit them, and then you send the book off and it's fine. Then it comes back and then it goes off again. And then, what was her name? Liz, who, not Liz, but another Liz, who went through the book with the finest comb you can imagine. And at one point, there's Jeremy Bentham or something. No, it was the letters of James Cook. You've got to check that the family still don't have rights over the letters of James. And then the next thing I'd quoted from Isaiah in the Bible. And without any sense of humour, she had written, biblical quotations don't need permissions. Who the fuck am I going to ask? But just in case, I got in touch with a vicar friend of mine, so he was going to intercede on that part. So it was. But one of the quotes I did end up keeping, because I had to jettison most of them, because it's very expensive quoting from people who have estates of people who want your money. And it was somebody. Oh, here we go. Bertrand Russell in 1934, and he said, perhaps instead of teaching manners, parents should teach the statistical probability that the person you are speaking to is just as good as you are. It is difficult to believe this. Very few of us do. In our instincts, believe it. One's own ego seems so incomparably more sensitive, more perceptive, wiser, and more profound than other people's. Yet, there must be very few of whom this is true. And it is not likely that oneself is one of those few. There is nothing like viewing oneself statistically as a means both to good manners and to good morals. And I really took that sort of idea to heart when I know I'm right, because I'm obviously right. And in fact, my social media bubble informs that I'm right, and in fact, informs me that I am quite moderate in my views, because actually within that bubble, you've got people who have learnt to play the game. And so I went and spoke to people who I do have fundamentally different points of view with. So Mike Swan is a gamekeeper, and we had, in fact, where's that? Your colleague, or bizarrely discovered that Andrew Lack, who's here, was one of your. He was a good mate. Yeah. It was a good mate, and so we got in there, and it was like I was quite nervous about this meeting. We originally via emails got the agreement to meet. Then I had to say, look, I just wanted to warn you, I am a vegetarian, because he'd offered me lunch, and so he was going to give me tomato soup. That's fine, because everybody I spoke to, I presented my prejudices. Because I think that's, in fact, the first word of Cull of the Wild was going to be prejudice, and then definition of prejudice, and here are my prejudices. Because I thought it was important to be clear that I know that I have my own views, and that statistically it is possible, maybe, that some of them are wrong. But so I set up my prejudice, and I haven't eaten meat for nearly 40 years. I hate the idea of animals being killed. I think that cruelty to animals, to people, everything is obscene. People who get a joy out of doing this thing, I think, must be mentally ill. All of these sorts of things. I'm a vegan. And I had to explain, this is not just a prissy way of saying vegan, it's just I'm vaguely vegan. I wrote my best sentence. And I wrote it it was for the New Science. I forgot to put it in the book. And I was talking about how I had been doing lots of talks to the Women's Institute. And it was at that point when I discovered that my will was not as strong as their cakes were good. Vaguely vegan. Anyway, so I went and met Mike Swan, and we connected over his abuse of whiskey. He was making blackberry whiskey, which I thought was like, really? Anyway, but his love of nature. And so we travelled around the estate that he manages. For his favourite pastime is to go on an armed nature ramble. And that's what he loves to do. Armed nature ramble to go and get stuff to eat. And he likes shooting stuff, and he likes eating it. And it's like we are so far apart on that. However, on spending the day with him, spending the time out, his estate is stunning. I saw more wildlife that day than I had done for most of the year. It was absolutely riddled with gorgeous things. And he was obviously really cared about it. And a lot of these things were only there because he'd managed it because he wanted to go on an armed nature ramble. I found that amazingly okay. If we had gone into this conversation at the point where I think you're scum because you like killing things, we would have got nowhere. We'd have no conversation. We wouldn't have found that common ground about the shared love of nature. Jonathan Reynolds, who worked at the Game and Wildlife Conservation Trust for years, wonderfully wise, intelligent man, but who likes killing things for fun. And we disagree on these things. But actually the biggest disagreement we had was who had recorded the best version of Sibelius' Fifth Symphony. Now, I know I'm right, but he also knows he's right. And so therefore we have to accept that these things are going to be difficult. And so during the book I went and met some fascinating people, conservationists who are out doing things, and going and meeting the person who may actually end up removing mink from the United Kingdom. It's like, this is a thing which may happen because there is somebody who's willing to go and do that. And when I begin the conversations with friends of mine who have very strong feelings about animal rights, it's an immediate, that's disgusting, you can't go around killing these animals, you've got to let nature take its course. And I just have to keep going back again and again and again. Nearly in every single one of these instances, we have already played God by introducing one species to somewhere where it didn't used to be. We have already done that thing. We can't, if we leave nature to take its course, all we're doing is dumping a whole bunch more pressure on the shoulders of an already rather embattled natural world. And so, okay, do we intervene? If we do intervene, do we accept that we have to kill some animals to do that? I hate it. So my head and my heart, the entire way through this book, my head and my heart have been in conflict. My heart is very clear. You don't kill stuff. You really, really don't. And the whole story began with hedgehogs, because obviously it had to begin with hedgehogs. And the very first work I did nearly 40 years ago up in Orkney, counting hedgehogs on North Ronaldsay. The island had been hedgehog-free until 1974. Then the postman, in his wisdom, decided to bring some over, release them into his garden, and then they started eating birds' eggs. Hedgehog numbers increased, birds decreased, and the assumption was that the hedgehogs were the cause. I did that for my degree project. I went back in 1991, and because of this, I then got involved with, do you remember the U.S. hedgehog, Cull? The plans to kill hedgehogs in the Outer Hebrides. They were eating birds' eggs, and so I got involved with that, discovered they were abusing some of my other research, got angry, and joined the campaign to stop the cull. In fact, I did the research which helped stop the killing of the hedgehogs. At the same time, I met an academic from New Zealand, and he was busy telling me how in New Zealand they're killing hedgehogs. In the 1860s, we maybe were not quite as bright as we could have been, and a whole bunch of people got to New Zealand, went, this place is gorgeous, you know what it misses? And so they wrote back to England and said, could you send hedgehogs? And they sent hedgehogs, and they were for a long time considered to be most benign of the introductions, but they've made themselves very much at home, but they are having an impact. So they're killing hedgehogs in New Zealand. And I couldn't see a reason not to kill the hedgehogs in New Zealand. No, there is absolutely no point boxing them up and shipping them across to England and releasing them here. Please, God, not again. I get it 2 or 3 times a year. Somebody writes to me with a plan and says, we should do this. We shouldn't be killing them there. We should be sending... No. Anyway, and so that is where the book began, was with that contradiction between doing the work to stop the killing of hedgehogs in the Outer Hebrides, and for the very same reason the hedgehogs are being killed in New Zealand, actually agreeing that the cull has to take place. And there I went off on a journey meeting people who are involved with doing this thing. I would love to have had a stunningly large amount of money and a much smaller consideration for my carbon debt. And I'd have loved to have gone to Hawaii and the Galapagos Islands and New Zealand and Australia and to other parts too, because it would have been fascinating to go and see all of these things in real life. But I had to rely an awful lot on Zoom. But I did have the advantage of going around places here, going to Lundy, going to Scilly. Getting rid of the rats on Lundy has increased the numbers of breeding Manx shearwaters and puffins enormously. The Scilly Isles, again, removing rats is a plan which they've got 2 islands cleared, they've got more. When I was there interviewing the person who's running that show, she had this moment of panic. A message had come through. They'd seen footprints on a different island. They thought they were hedgehog footprints. And then oh gosh, do we have to start killing? Oh, no. So the hedgehog, it wasn't hedgehog footprints. I looked, it was cat. Very, very different. And and then I ended up going up to Orkney. And in 2011, somebody saw stoats on Orkney. They'd not been in Orkney ever. Stoats are stunning, amazing, gorgeous creatures. Stoats are also one of the biggest nightmares of any wildlife manager will ever face, because female stoats are always pregnant. When a female gives birth, a male will come into the nest and will mate with her straight away, but will also mate with the kits, with the babies, straight away. And they're too small to go become pregnant, but they have delayed implantation. So it just means you have got gazillions of pregnant stoats all over the place. Their numbers can increase really, really fast. So they started, 2011, they started the process. They're putting traps around the islands to stop them getting to the other islands. They began that process really quickly. They then had to do fundraise, they had to show that it was feasible, they had to get a social feasibility study. No point doing it if you don't have society on your side. That was in place. They began in 2019. They began the work of removing, and then COVID kicked in. And so in the space of the time they were furloughed, they weren't able to go out and do the work. All of the work that had been done before increased. But they're now back in action, and they have got some of the most amazing dogs, including, and I have to say this with best respect to our rescue hound, Ogley, who prefers Zoe. But they do have probably the handsomest dog ever, Spud, who is a black Labrador of stunning physique, who goes out sniffing for stoats and can sniff a stoat at an enormous distance. Into a headwind, downwind, he'll sniff stoats in tusky grass and find stride stoat scat. And this is the way they're beginning to work to get this done. I cannot see a reason not to kill the stoats in Orkney. But also I've met, online mostly, people who have explained to me why we should consider not killing. And there are a whole bunch of really good reasons not to kill as well. And the whole compassionate conservation movement is something which is growing. And basically the problem has been the easy, relatively easy option in all of these invasive non-native species problems is killing. The easy option is killing. There are complicated, subtle problems. In Australia, for example, there's a whole bunch of little marsupials about the size of rabbits, which are staggeringly tasty for cats and foxes. And they are there's already been a whole bunch of extinctions. There will be more extinctions coming. So there's a big program killing cats, killing foxes, until one reserve stopped killing dingo. And there was that moment, oh, wait a minute, you stopped killing the dingoes. The dingoes actually then repress the cats and the foxes to a point that the marsupials are able to thrive again. So there are clever ways around it. It's just the attention isn't given to that yet. I hope, maybe, some attention will be. And finally, the purpose of the book is to just show that ecology, which is normally treated very much as one of these sort of second division subjects, is maybe given a little bit more respect. If you were to have somebody in Parliament right now, member of the cabinet, with as little knowledge as they have of ecology, but of economics, for example, or of politics, it would be an outcry, be an outrage. How dare you have people in there? However, ecology is the economics of a situation, the politics of a situation, the celebrity of a situation, all these things are trivial, tiny little subsets of a healthy ecosystem. So, but we give it very little attention at all. So anyway, the point is, people read this, maybe because they're outraged, maybe because they're fascinated, but in the end they go, actually this subject is fascinating and it's worthy of attention. And finally, I just wanted to introduce the idea, the final bit of the book, because it's appropriate for what needs to happen now. I wanted to interview Rory Stewart, but he said, no, I'm way too busy. But he'd done a really fantastic programme on Radio 4 about argument and dissent, and he was talking about how the political discourse used to be very crudely described as a bell curve, as a normal distribution curve. Most people have moderate views and then extreme views on either side, fewer people, that sort of thing. But with the arrival of social media in particular, which is driven by outrage because that leads to attention, which is currency, there has been a move towards extending. He then reckoned we've moved from a bell curve to a wine glass, an empty wine glass. And so my last paragraph. But I do not despair. That is only for those who have not seen the end of the story. There's about 4 or 5 really blatant Lord of the Rings rip-offs in this book. And as we never can, hope is the only way forward. And what I hope for is that we recognise the danger of an empty wine glass, and we fill that void with thoughtful conversation, a willingness to brave the world outside our own bubbles, and above all, good wine. So thank you so much for coming in and helping me celebrate the launch of Cull of the Wild. I would now request, we have cake, because cake is the other thing to go alongside fine wine. So please, if there's any wine left, fill your wine glasses. Find some cake. I'd like to thank the kind deliverers of cake, Naya, where's Naya gone, who made me brownies, which is gorgeous, and to Mackie, who brought cake, and to Waitrose that let me buy the last hedgehog cake in the shop, because I thought, given what this has all been about, me ceremonially cutting the head off a hedgehog is probably sending mixed messages. Anyway, thank you so much for coming. And what I could do, actually, if you want cake, book signing, I'm going to do book signing, definitely that. But it was basically, you're more likely to get cake if you buy a book.
And then you'll sign it.
Yeah, no, the book, not the cake. No, listen. Anyway, anyway, thank you very much.